All right, I am Burt Beckwith. This is Grails Worst Practices. I work at a company called Cantina now. I left SpringSource. Very cool company in Boston. We do lots of good stuff, front-end work, back-end work, ideation, all that sort of stuff. This is the view of Boston from our office on a sunny day, which we haven't had for a while. All right, and so I have an admission to make. I submitted the talk proposal, and I wanted to do a best practices talk, but I actually accidentally had a typo, and it came out as worst practices. So everything I'm saying here is actually really important, and you should follow these exactly. You should not do the exact opposite of everything I'm about to say for this talk. Okay. So the important concepts of the talk are going to be that doing things easier is better, finishing tasks faster is better, using the first solution that you think of is better, minimizing the amount of time you spend at work is a good thing, get others to do your work for you, lazy is good, the word of the day is vago. If there's a problem, fix it when and if you have to. Cover your tracks. Now, some of the things that we're going to talk about here might get you in a little bit of trouble, so try not to be so obviously the one doing these sort of things. And try to be, more like your dog. Just be happy. Okay, so we all love Grails, but it can be frustrating. Every once in a while you get just this close to solving a problem, and then you just... So let's try to make our lives easier. So think like a PHP developer. Facebook uses PHP, right? They have 1 billion users. So if we can think like PHP developers and work like PHP developers, maybe we can one day be as big and as good as PHP. We can use object-oriented principles and best practices, but we don't have to, so why bother? So let's talk first about controllers. Make sure you always have one controller per domain class. When you create the scaffolding, that's how it gets generated. And if that's how it's generated, that must be the right way. A corollary to that is always trust generated code. It's always correct. Although I don't talk about the database migration plugin, same thing goes there. When you get a migration script that's generated, it has to be correct. Just push it, run it. Put most of your code in controllers, because they're that firewall between the clients and your server. So that's the entry point. Why not put all your code right there? You can't generate all your HTML in controllers, of course, so you use GSPs for that. So put a tremendous amount of code in your GSPs also. You can put Groovy code in scriptlets, and you can actually make database calls from GSPs. So, and if you can, go for it. If it were a bad thing, then it would be disallowed. Now, of course, the bigger your GSPs get, eventually you'll hit the size limit of a GSP. At that point, you can do some refactoring, maybe. It's about 64K, so you got a lot of room there to play. Don't worry that it's really difficult to test the code that's in your GSPs. You can't exactly unit test them. Pretty much have to functional test them. I'll get to why we're not going to be doing a lot of testing anyway in the future. So this is a quote, and I'm not going to name who said it. But as I was doing this talk this week, I procrastinated a lot, and I was doing a lot of the work for this talk in my hotel room here in Madrid. And there was a question on Stack Overflow about imports in GSPs, and how do you do them correctly? And I put a little comment in there saying the best way to do imports is to not use them, right? Don't put code in your GSPs. And the response to that comment was this. And I thought, well, this is great. My work is done. Someone's already following my best practices, my worst practices. That was a serious question. I was absolutely shocked. Okay, so to help us out with putting all of our code in controllers, now you'll notice in 2.3 that the controllers have the @transactional annotation. So you can do transactions right inside your controllers. That's awesome. So we don't even need services. Sadly. You can't do transactions from GSPs, right? Someone please create a Jira request for that. You can use the with transaction block, though. So it can be done. It's just a little bit more work than it should be. So, of course, don't waste time with services because everything's in your controllers. There you go. Simple. OK, so idiomatic Groovy. So I have never really used Perl, but one of the things that is Perl is famous for is how Perl developers like to have really hard to understand and very compact and very cryptic Perl code. So we should do the same thing with Groovy. So don't type anything. Use def. The letters are really, they're just right next to each other on the keyboard, D-E-F. So simple. If the Groovy runtime can figure out what's going on, so can you later on, so can your coworkers. Write everything as closures, even if it would be better to do a method, because closures are cool. You can't use them in Java. Well, in Java 8 you sort of can, but it'll make you seem really smart to people who don't use Groovy. Don't bother writing performance critical code in Groovy, in Java, or using compile static. That would be just silly. And do not read this page, which was written by some French guy, Guillaume Laforge or something. He clearly doesn't know what he's talking about. It's a long list of best practices for writing excellent Groovy code, and I don't recommend you click that link and read that page and follow those guidelines. Code reuse. Copy and paste. A lot. If it works once, use it again. Now, if you keep everything copied and pasted, you don't have to worry about all these extra files. Subclassing and utility classes and tag libs and templates and all that stuff. Just copy it and use it again. If you find it on Stack Overflow or on a blog post or something and it's reasonably close to what you wanted to do, take it, ship it, you're good to go. Now, if you do have a bug in the code that you copied and pasted in multiple places, work your hardest to find all those places and fix those bugs. Try to find them all. Like I said, testing, it's really not all it's cracked up to be. I don't know about you guys, but I don't get paid by the line of code. So I get paid to write features, and I want to get home as soon as I can. So testing just is not good. Because you know how it is. I mean, you hear about testing. It's supposedly a good thing. So you learn how to use Spock or whatever, and you write some tests, and they pass, and you're like, OK, I'm going to do some testing. And then something changes in your test fail. Come on, now I got to fix my tests. So if you don't have tests, they can't fail, and you can't get yelled at for breaking the build. If you must write tests, wait until the end of the project. Because there's always that time at the end of the project for documentation and testing and all that. And you'll also know more about your application. Because at the beginning of the project, you really don't know what you're going to be doing yet if you don't have good specs. So wait till the end. Always write unit tests. Don't do functional tests. Don't do integration tests. You can run unit tests from inside the IDE. They run really quickly. Even if they're not really good coverage of your even if they're not quality tests, they're fast. That's what we want, quick. And especially for persistence. Don't listen to those people that tell you that you have to test persistence using a database. You can do in-memory testing for your persistence. It's fine. It's good enough. Because if you had to use integration tests and functional tests for your persistence, and why does Grails let you write unit tests for your domain classes? Don't bother with CI servers. Again, same thing. If you have CI servers that are running tests and the tests fail, then you get all those emails, and maybe you're at home and you're just settling down to watch some TV, and now you got to fix your build, and no, I refuse. Okay, so security. Now this is going to sound strange coming from me because I wrote a lot of the Spring Security plugins, but I don't recommend you actually use Spring Security or Shiro or any of the big proven tested security frameworks. Just do it yourself, write your own. Because it's fun, it's easy, it's relatively straightforward. Because think about it. What do you need to do for security? You need to have users and roles and that sort of stuff, and no, not much more. You need to, hash the passwords, and probably need to remember me, and might need to integrate with LDAP. You might need to integrate with third-party service. You might need to be able to do run as. It's not that hard. It's easy. Just do it yourself. Store clear text passwords. Because how's anyone going to get to your database? And the one huge benefit of having clear text passwords is that you can then email your passwords to the users if they forget them. And I love the fact that every month I get an email from JBoss with my password in it in clear text. That's great. And if you do get hacked, it's not your money. If you do get fired, you'll get another job. I get contacted by recruiters all the time. I'll get another job if I get hacked. Store passwords in source control, because where else would you put them? This is called security by obscurity, because why would anyone know to look there? I do not believe that if I were to click that link, that I would find 10,000 Amazon S3 production credentials in GitHub. I don't think that's the case. 9,700. Go ahead. Did you guys hear about this? 9,700 passwords in GitHub. I think what we could do is we could create a distributed storage service where we borrow a little bit of everyone's S3. Now, of course, if they find out that you're using it, they're going to delete your file, so you have to store multiple copies. But we just take a little bit of everyone's, and then you don't have to pay for storage. Okay, database access. This is contentious. Always use fail and error. Don't bother checking with has errors. Just let the exception throw and go to the error page, especially for expected user mistakes like typing the wrong password, things like that. Users will figure out what they did wrong. Besides, and all they ever do is complain. They're just really, really negative about bugs and missing features. And exceptions aren't expensive. There's no real cost to creating a stack trace in Java, and it's not about 10 times as expensive in Groovy as in Java. And if you click that link, you will not see a very big, comprehensive study of the cost of exceptions in Java. And if we look at these two sets of code, on the left, we have the fail and error true case, right? So you have a try-catch. You catch the exception. If there wasn't an exception, everything went well. If there is an exception, you handle the error case. That's great. You don't use the information in the exception. It's just a sort of a go-to. And that's clearly better than this, where you save it, and you check that if it has errors, and you check the success case or the error case. Clearly better. Always use exceptions for flow control and for error checking. Database transactions are really hard. You probably heard that they're important, but where do you even find out how to use transactions in Grails or transactions in general? You wouldn't want to go to that link and watch a talk that I did last year at GreatConf about transactions in Grails. And then there's Going for REST, which is pretty cool. It's almost like a pipeline from the database to your users. And if you do that, you wouldn't want to use the Spring Security REST plugin. Always use collections for many-to-many relationships. There's this talk from 3 years ago that describes the cost of using collections, the potential really serious costs of using collections for many-to-many, belongs to and has many. And that's 3 years old, so there's no way that that's still exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. Cache as much as possible. In fact, cache everything. If a little bit of caching is good, then caching a lot is great. But keep it simple. There's a setting in config.groovy where you can auto-cache all of your queries. Turn that on, and don't worry about it. Now, this blog post from a few years ago that talks about caching in Hibernate can't be correct. The guy obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. And one of the things that he mentions is that if you're in Hibernate, if you cache domain classes that change a lot, you'll constantly be invalidating your cache because Hibernate is very pessimistic. So for example, if you cache all your users and you add one user or you change one user, every cached result that has anything to do with the user is going to get flushed. So anything that's read-only is going to pretty much stay in the cache. But anything that changes a lot is going to be constantly getting dumped out of the cache. So you go to the database, you get your result, you store it in the cache, and you pretty much immediately throw it away. So especially if you're distributing that around multiple servers, you're not actually saving anything at all. So, but that can't be true, so just cache everything. Don't bother optimizing queries. It's much better to have several small queries that do a lot of work, and then you can do the sorting and filtering at the web server. It's much better to do that than having a finely tuned, optimized query. This is real code. I forget where I got it. But take a look at what's happening here. So you find an insurer, and insurer.plans. So this has a collection of plans, right? So it has many plans. So for every plan for the insurer, loop through that. For every customer in the plan's customers, we're going n squared, n cubed. This is getting really expensive. Getting a total age. And then we're going to say for plan customers is empty. So that's going to go to the database just to get the size. So even if we hadn't already gone through the whole collection up here, just to see if there's any elements in the collection, you're going to load the entire collection into memory just to see if there's 0 or more than one element. But it's very readable, right? Several steps. It's very obvious what's going on. And there's no way that that's insanely expensive. So go with that. Do this sort of code. Don't share. Don't write blog posts. Sharing information with people, helping them out, telling them about things that you learned. Don't create plugins so that other people don't have to write code. Because you write a blog post, and you get a bunch of comments and complaints. You release a plugin, people tell you what you didn't do, they write up bugs, they complain. People are just so negative. Let them figure it out just like you did. Don't report bugs. Because if you saw the bug, someone else will see it, they'll report it. You know. If you do report a bug, don't bother trying to fix it. Don't send in a pull request or a patch, because it won't give you more information about Grails, more knowledge about Grails. It won't impress the Grails team. It won't lead possibly to becoming a Grails committer. And it certainly won't lead to possibly, if you do a lot of this work, getting a job on the Grails team. Well, actually, that's probably true. You pretty much have to die, or someone has to die on the team, or someone has to quit in order for the Grails team to get a new person on the team, unfortunately. So, but all the other stuff is still true. Don't bother reading books, because it's not like there is a really good introductory book, a very comprehensive coverage of Grails from the beginning all the way to the end. And there's not this thing, but I don't know who wrote that, but some advanced book on Grails. Don't bother signing up for the mailing list. There's no good information there. And we don't even know how to sign up for them. I mean, where would you even find out how to register for the mailing list? It's not like there's archives of the list that you can search, or a second archive that's really got a nice UI. When there's a new release, don't bother reading the release notes and the what's new pages to figure out what changed and how to upgrade. Just complain a lot and have other people tell you what to do. Because where are you going to even find this information? It's not like there's stuff right in the documentation. What's new in Grails 2.0, what's new in Grails 2.1, what's new in Grails 2.2, what's new in Grails 2.3. Don't bother following @Grails Framework, the Twitter feed. There's no useful information there. And it's mostly just a bunch of Graham's Instagram photos of his lunch. Guy's obsessed with his lunch and those weird filters he uses. So some more minor things. Don't bother with packages, just put everything in the default package. Plus everything's in a controller anyway, so you're just gonna have one huge folder of classes. Makes it easier to find everything, you know, everything's right there. Don't worry about documenting your code so much. You wrote it, you'll understand it later, and your teammates will figure it out. Don't worry about writing self-documenting code. You know, variable names that make sense, method names that make sense, typing your variables so that it's reasonably clear just by looking at the code what you do. Just write it. Don't use dependency management. Just throw jar files in the lib directory. Because then they're right there. You know, if you use dependency management, where are my jar files? I don't even know where they are. But if you put them right there in the lib directory, there they are. Use println. Now, theoretically, this will fill up the Catalina.log file in Tomcat to be gigabytes in size, but disk space is cheap. You can buy more disk drives. Put lots of stuff in the session. It doesn't affect scalability at all. And it's right there. It's so convenient. And yeah, it takes a lot more memory, but again, just throw some money at the solution. You can buy more memory. Very inexpensive. And whatever you do not buy this book. And don't use that code to get 40 or 50% off on the price. Wow, I really blasted through this talk. I am done. Okay, gracias.